My father got, he got his girlfriend pregnant.
Things got deathly quiet. Everybody's on the barn bank talking, church was in the barn and staring, and all of a sudden Miriam said, somebody yelled, "Joe!" And I can't even tell the story. She said she had never seen Amish people hug. They're hugging him. "Joe, you're alive." They didn't know what happened to him.
And he told his wife that, okay, this is not my real name, and I'm not really this age.
We just got done having a conversation with Dale Cramer and John Schmid. Now, Dale is from Georgia, and John is from 10 minutes from here, just outside of Winesburg, Ohio, where we are. And Dale came up to share his dad's story of how he ran away from his home at 19, I think, or maybe 17, and joined the Army, was, in the Army for 23 years, I think. He was Amish when he ran away. He got married, had kids, and his wife literally did not know that the man she married was not named Howard. His name was actually Joe, and that he was Amish. It is an incredible story of redemption, and I think the best way to describe it is just God's grace on a man's journey. It's an incredible thing. I tried hard to keep everybody straight. There are 17 uncles and aunts. There are tons and tons of family stories, and it was an incredible time with John and Dale. And I'm so glad that we had the chance to sit and just share this story. I don't think that you would regret the time. If you have a situation in your past that nags in the back of your mind that I really should make it right, take the time and watch, and you'll see how the Lord can use our decisions and can turn things around for good and for just for healthy, solid relationships that bring closure and healing to a family. It's absolutely just an amazing story. This podcast is sponsored by my friends at Azure Standard. Around here, we have tons of Amish bulk food stores.
Like the Asher.
Seth, it was your grandpa, right, that began the Ashery many, many moons ago, and they're actually one of the oldest bulk food stores around. Here's my point. As Lisa and I have traveled more, we have picked up on the fact that not everybody, in fact, most other towns and families do not enjoy the luxury of being able to go to a bulk food store and gather up all the things that they need in mass. I mean, I guess you have Costco, but that's different. Azure Standard brings that kind of food right to a drop in your town. You can also order household goods, garden stuff, and books. Everything is at azurestandard.com. Tell them Marlon and Plain Values sent you.
So hold my hand. Think of me sweetly with a graveyard flower.
How do you even begin the whole story of your dad?
Wow. Well, he was raised Amish, and he left because of a situation that he got himself in, is a bundling accident. My father got, he got his girlfriend pregnant. They were both old order Amish. They had, they were in that, what was it, the Tobe Church at the time?
Mm-hmm.
they didn't have a whole lot of options. They weren't really associating with anybody outside that church. Anyway,
Where did they live?
somewhere north of Fredericksburg, Apple Creek, maybe. That was what I said in the book, but I don't remember if it was factual. It's up that way. I can't remember for sure if it's Apple Creek. Anyway, his father was famous for being fierce, and I think his father was too.
Harsh.
Harsh, yeah. His name was Harf, and he was known for being heavy-handed, especially with his sons. And I've discovered over time it's hereditary, runs in the family. And my father told me, we had a long conversation about it, and he told me that it was the whole bundling thing was sort of a tool that was quietly used, not spoken about, but it was quietly used to keep the sons at home because they would eventually end up marrying the girls if they got in trouble.
Can I pause you again?
Yeah.
Okay, when you say bundling, I think of bed courtship.
Yes, same thing.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure that I'm on the right page. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to. Is bed courtship. And there are a lot of myths about it, about the board and the being sewed up in the sheet. There's none of that. It was a matter of convenience, first of all, because if they go on a date on a Saturday night and they're in a buggy, it's wintertime, they're 10, 15 miles apart, it's much simpler and more convenient for him to stay there because they're going to be in the same church the next morning anyway. Why do all that driving?
Yeah, back and forth.
It's a matter of convenience. But anyway, Dad left home. Well, first of all, he left home because he was on his way to church that Sunday. He was coming down the stairs ready to go to church. And his father met him at the bottom of the stairs. Now, his younger brother was with him. His father met him at the bottom of the stairs and tore into him again and told him, everything he could think of about what a lowlife he was and worthless human being. And he stood there and took it until his father finally stomped off and got in his buggy and went on to church. And then he looked at his brother and said, I can't do this. And it was the Sunday that they were supposed to repent and be accepted back into the church after being banned. He never went back and never had the ban lifted. So he was banned.
So he was in the ban because of his girlfriend becoming pregnant?
Yes, they had been in the band for the traditional 6 weeks, I believe it was. It was 3 Sundays, 6 weeks. And he had been in the band for that 6 weeks. And this was the Sunday that they were to go back and repent and announce that they were getting married.
Okay.
And
he takes off.
His father succeeded in changing his mind about that. He said, I just can't take any more of this. So he took off, and his younger brother went with him. And this was they were living south of Fredericksburg, because I've been to the location where that house was, and there was a children's home on the slope between them and the road. And you could go past that children's home and down across the road is where now there's a bike trail there. It used to be a railroad, and the railroad was there at that time. He and his brother hopped a freight just there south of Fredericksburg, and they got off in Kentucky. Elizabethtown. And he immediately started using a false name. He had one good English friend in the Little Red Schoolhouse when he went there through the 8th grade. And it was Howard Cramer, who eventually became the president of the bank in Fredericksburg. And a really nice guy. And he had been friends with him. He said that Howard would occasionally share his candy with him or something like that. And then nobody else, there was some friction between the Amish and the English kids. Mm-hmm. But this guy was nice to him. So, and he didn't want his father to catch up with him, so he stole his name. And he ended up joining the Army under an assumed name, didn't know that it was wrong. He didn't know, first of all, that he was over the draft age. He'd always been a conscientious objector. So he lied about his age when he joined the Army.
Let's talk about that for a second. How old was he when he left?
I think he was 19.
Okay.
Which would have been, he was already illegal if he's not. Howard Cramer was a draft dodger. Joe Miller was a conscientious objector.
So Howard Cramer was a legitimate draft dodger.
No. When he changed his name to Howard Cramer at the age of 19, he was no longer Amish. He became English, and that English Howard Cramer was a draft dodger because he was 19.
I got it. I got it.
And he recognized that. So he lied to him. He first of all lied about his name. Mm-hmm. He did that so his father wouldn't find him because he had found his brother once before when he ran off, and he said,
Let me interject here.
Yeah.
Why he changed his name. My wife's uncle did the same thing, ran off to join the Army, and he was too young, and they brought him back.
Really?
My wife's uncle and Howard were in the same church. So when Joe Miller, Howard, when they asked his name, he said, if I say my real name, Dad's going to find me, like Andy Byler's did. So that was part of
that Andy Byler that had tried to join the Army.
Yeah, my wife's uncle was Andy.
Okay,
and he didn't have a good home life, so he ran away. Stepfather, stuff like that, and they brought him back. And then there's more to this story about Andy and Joe or Howard. But I remember hearing that. I'm not sure your dad told me or somebody said, Dad's not going to find me.
Yeah.
So he thought of the first name he could think of, his classmate Howard Cramer.
Yeah.
See, the thing is, I worked for Dale's uncle, Eli, and I'd hear, for 4 or 5 years, I'd heard snippets of this story. So some of the things I knew that Dale didn't know about.
I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know that Andy was part of that, the reason that he changed his name.
No, I found out I can make up stuff, but I think I got this one right.
Well, this is fiction.
You've got the book to prove it.
Yeah.
So your dad takes off, joins the Army, lies about his name. Now he's in a bind, but he doesn't really even understand that he's in a bind with his name because would that be like that's a crime? Is it
It's a federal offense.
It's a federal offense.
Yeah, that's Leavenworth. And there's a conversation about that in the book that, well, I made it up, but it's because the book is fiction. But there was a conversation of that sort that he had with a first sergeant that he trusted. And he presented it as a hypothetical. I think he didn't know for sure when he got in. He may have known some of it. I mean, he wasn't an unintelligent man.
Right.
But he had a conversation down the line with a first sergeant that he was friends with, and he put it to him hypothetically, if a guy were to join the Army under an assumed name, would that be a crime? Well, yeah, you could end up in Leavenworth. And he said, well, what would you do? And he actually did ask the guy, this was a true part of it, what would you do if it was you? And he said, well, if that was me, I would keep my mouth shut for 7 years and let the statute of limitations run out.
Would that have to be after he has now left the Army? 7 years after that? Or
No,
7 years
7
after
years
the lie?
After the lie, after actually signing under a false name, he would have
Right.
to wait 7 years.
Meanwhile, back at Eli H. Miller's carpenter gang, I heard the story. Eli told about some either FBI or big officials coming around the Amish church asking about this Joe Miller, because these Amish boys would go right up the rank because they could talk German. Right after World War II, they needed people that could talk German.
And they could probably shoot.
And they'd get high security. Well, as soon as he got high security, they're going to find out he's not really Howard Cramer. And that's when, and I'm not sure that why, when, but Eli remembers somebody coming to their door with a suit and a tie asking about Joe Miller. Because they wanted to verify the fact that he is, I don't know if he had already confessed that he wasn't Howard Cramer.
I don't think so, because, well,
But he remembers Army people coming, or government people asking about Joe Miller.
back in the 40s.
Yeah, while Howard was still in the Army, because this must be when this high security thing, they start checking you out when you get that kind of thing.
So this is in World War II time.
Right after.
Very end of World War II and right
Very
after.
end. So how long is he in the Army for?
23 years.
23 years.
Yeah.
I thought he served a tour.
No,
And-
he was he did really well in the Army
Wow.
because probably because of his father, a basic training sergeant had nothing on his father.
After a low order Amish church, Army's a breeze.
Yeah, the Army was a piece of cake after dealing with his father all those years, Wow. And as far as work ethic, he told me that, that when they're shocking the corn, he said you were considered a man when you could do 100 shocks of corn in one day. And he did it when he was 14. So, and that was one of the rare occasions when his father was proud of him.
Wow. Was he a big guy? Was he a little guy?
No, he was. He admitted finally later in life. He'd always said he was 5'9", and he finally admitted very late that the tallest day of his life he was 5'7". And he had always been 5'9".
Yeah.
But very strong and very work oriented, very strong work ethic, which I think was a gift from his father. But he did really well in the Army. He was intelligent. He spoke German. He was loyal. He knew what to do and what not to do, and he made a really good sergeant. Trust me.
So
He brought it home with him.
yeah. So what happened? John alluded to him confessing about the name thing. How did that go down?
He did not confess that. Well, now they might have gone and asked questions, but I don't. This is the first I've heard of that, so I don't know.
I mean, he would have had to produce some kind of paperwork with Howard Cramer on it, right?
Well, yeah, he had.
Did he forge all that stuff, Dale?
No, he just didn't. He didn't have a birth certificate or anything like that. He was born in Mexico. He ran into some real issues when he started drawing Social Security. That was really fun because he went.
I heard that story.
He went.
Well, see, he'd lied about his age, that he was only 18 when he was 19 or 20. So now he wants to draw Social Security at 65, and they said, you're not that old yet. Because he had lied about his age to join the Army.
He said, "Well, Howard Cramer is not that old, but Joe Miller is."
I can start adding stuff that I heard over the years, but I found they actually proved his age when they found the family Bible. and they had written in that old ink, which is hard to forge. They could tell this is actually when he was born in the front page of the family Bible.
And that was when he went for Social Security. What he told me, that was how they verified who he was.
That proved that he was 65, not 63.
So,
and he was married and had 2 children when they came back from a tour in Germany. And that was when the statute of limitations ran out, and he told his wife that, okay, this is not my real name, and I'm not really this age. And actually, my family doesn't live in Canada, and they're not all dead. And we're going to stop off in Ohio and visit them. And by the way, they're Amish.
And she didn't know what Amish was.
No idea.
Oh my goodness.
Not a clue.
So were you one of the 2 kids?
Yes.
Okay.
I was the younger of the 2. I think I was a year and a half, 2 years old at that time.
And you were born in Germany?
Yes.
You were born in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
Is your mom a German?
No, she's a Georgia peach.
Really?
He met her when after he was in the Army. I don't know what he was doing there, but he was at a base south of Atlanta when he met her there for some temporary thing before he went to Europe.
Wow. So they get married. They have the 2 kids. Now, does your mom still live?
No, they both passed now.
Okay. Yeah. What was that like for your mom? I cannot imagine. Oh, by the way, I mean, a whole bunch of things are just being thrown at her. What did she do? How did that whole trip go?
This occurred and I heard about it from my aunt. My mother's sister told me that they came back from Germany, and apparently this is when the statute of limitations had run out. And he had all these pictures of her with me and my brother, and we were at Niagara Falls. They came into New York and went to, while they were there, I guess waiting for their car to arrive or something like, and they went to Niagara Falls for a few days. And every picture that I see of us, and I had seen this for years before I had any explanation, but every picture my mother she was holding me and then holding my older brother's hand because he was walking and I was small. So she's holding me and she's looking at the camera, and the look on her face says, "Come near me and I'll kill you."
And you saw this as a kid and just assumed your mom was always ticked off or something.
I had seen that picture, and it was every picture that was taken in Niagara Falls, that same look, And my aunt finally told me that what had happened was this was where he decided to tell her and just unload the entire train car full of baggage.
Oh, my goodness.
And even then, I don't think he didn't tell her at that time that he had a daughter.
Had he stayed in touch with the Amish girl?
Not at that time. He had not.
Okay.
She ended up being raised by his sister.
His daughter was raised by his...
Yeah, and she thought that was her mother.
Yeah, and I thought she was my cousin.
Really?
But
let me give a little my wife. See, my wife's family was from the same church, and Andy, the guy who got brought back home, when he was 18, he did join the Army. And just like Joe or Howard Cramer, went right up the ranks because he could talk German, and they needed people.
Yep.
So Andy gets high clearance training in Berlin, Germany. And he was a cut up. He's goofing off, and all of a sudden he notices everybody's at attention but him. And here an officer had walked in. So he jumps in line, and of course the officer goes right to the last guy that was goofing off, gets right in his face, looks at his name tag, and he says, "Byler, wie bist? How are you?" And here, And Andy didn't know who it was because the name said Cramer. He said, "Joe, you sell Deke? Is that you?"
No way.
And the first thing Andy said was, "Sarah wants to know if you're going to come home. She's waiting on you." And he said, Joe just went on talking as if he hadn't said anything. So he wrote to Sarah, "You better just get on with your life." And then she married Enos Shetler. And I got it. How is this now? I get myself confused because somehow there was somebody died, but the first 3 children were my wife's cousins, and then somebody died, and Enos married your aunt. So the rest of those, what were there? 17 children.
Sarah died in childbirth.
Yeah. In other words, the girl who had Joe's
Your
daughter.
sister.
No.
Well,
The mother of my half sister.
I'm sorry. Okay, so she had
That was
another
Sarah.
child and then passed away.
if you can follow this, you don't understand it.
She married Enos Shetler. Remember that.
Okay.
And then
But she had a couple children before she died in childbirth.
was Mose one of hers, or was he married to somebody else before?
No, Mose was not one of them. Let's see, there was
was
Miriam, and there were 3 of them.
Miriam, Amanda, and Martha.
Yeah, those are all full sisters. And then
But those were Mary's. Those were Mary's kids by
Henry Byler.
Byler.
Yeah, my wife's uncle.
He was a hunchback. That's not, it's a weird story.
So anyway, she died, and then she remarried to.
When Sarah died, it left Enos single.
Yeah, then Enos married your aunt.
With Mose and Fanny.
Howard Cramer's sister.
He had Mose and Fanny. And then he brought those 2 children. Mose he had by Sarah.
That's right. Enos Shetler's first wife died. Mary, your aunt's first husband,
Henry died.
And then they married, and when they married, there were like 5 or 6 children.
Yeah, she had 3 daughters, and she was struggling to survive at the time because
Right.
Amish women don't have job skills; they're
Right.
housewives. She had Amanda, Miriam, and
Martha.
and my half sister
and
Fanny was with Enos, and then she married Enos so that she could raise Fanny. And Enos was a strange character. But she married him just so she could raise my dad's daughter. She was best friends with Sarah, the mother of this girl. Was another reason why she wanted to raise her, and she did. And when I was growing up, this girl was my cousin. But between them, between his and hers and ours, over the years they had 17 children. And Fanny was just one of the older girls, and she was always my cousin. I had no idea she was my half sister until I was about 18 years old.
Mm-hmm. What's your mom's name?
Anne.
Okay.
Yeah.
So John, I'm doing my best to follow all this, and this is
It's hard
crazy.
for us.
This is kind of crazy. So your mom is glaring in Niagara Falls,
Yes.
and you're an infant. You're just a little.
I'm a year and a half, maybe 2.
At Niagara Falls, had they come home yet, or were they on their way home?
They were on their way.
So that it was
They were
after
waiting for a car. Or so. Traditionally, when you come back with the Army, if you had a car overseas, you'd have to wait in New York for your car to be delivered. That's probably what they were doing. And they had some time, so they went to Niagara Falls.
So they come home to Apple Creek, Fredericksburg. Here in
No,
Ohio.
they came home to Georgia. Well, they did stop off here, and my mother had some really good stories to tell about that. She didn't know what Amish were. She had no idea.
So it was on the way home when they stopped in when church was at Enos's house.
Yes, and you probably know more about.
Let me
those
tell the
stories.
story I heard working for his uncle Eli, And Miriam, my wife's cousin, would tell this. So here's Miriam. Miriam would have been young. I'm not sure how old she would have been, but she remembers. Here's the story I heard, which is not exactly the same as his, but the gist is the same. On the way home, he starts telling his wife, I'm not really an orphan. I have a family. And here's the story I've been telling. So he let that sink in, and then he said, and my people are Amish. Well, she didn't know what that was. So they go home, and nobody's there. It's Sunday. Church is at his sister's place. And his sister married Enos Shetler, who was the stepfather of Fanny. Mm-hmm. But her mother died. Anyway, so, and see, when Howard joined the Army, his brother Bill went on home and joined the Amish church. So here's church is out. They found out church is at that. So they, instead of staying home, they went to Enos Shetler's place, started back the lane, and people are leaving. Here comes two Amish guys walking down the lane, and one of them's Howard's brother, Bill. Mm-hmm. And Bill told the guy with him, well, first of all, for a car to come in that kind of a church on any time is unusual, especially on a Sunday. So that raised eyebrows, and here the guy in the car is wearing an Army uniform.
Right.
Totally unusual. And Bill says, I think that's my brother Joe. So they turn around and go back in, and Miriam, the young Amish cousin of my wife, tells her story. Here comes a car. And it's like when the gunslinger comes into the bar, the piano player stops, everybody stares, and then out steps a soldier. And things got deathly quiet. Everybody's on the barn bank talking, church was in the barn and staring, and all of a sudden Miriam said, somebody yelled, Joe! And I can't even tell the story. She said she had never seen Amish people hug. They're hugging him. Joe, you're alive. They didn't know what happened to him.
The story at home was everywhere was that he was dead.
This episode is sponsored by my friends at Kentucky Lumber. A few years ago, Lisa and I were looking at redoing the wood flooring on our top floor for the kids' bedrooms. And she was doing a bunch of research, and she came back one night and she said, Marlon, I found this great company called Kentucky Lumber. We had never heard of them before, and she saw and felt something that really resonated deeply with her. And the more that I learned about Derek and his team, the more I understood why. They're an incredibly giving family. They've adopted a couple kids. They've fostered a couple kids. They live their life the way we want to live our life, and train their kids in the way that the Bible tells us to do, to the very best of their ability. And we've been able to get to know them. Guys, if you need any kind of wood products, from flooring to trim to anything else, you can find them at drywallhaters.com.
The story at home was everywhere was that he was dead.
Really?
Yeah, they didn't know where he was. I mean, his brother Bill didn't know what happened to him. That's why it doesn't add up, because Lydia's uncle, Sarah, said if you see Joe, ask him what he's going to do, because I have this child. So somehow the stories get mixed up, but they didn't know where he was.
Had no idea, and here he comes.
And so Miriam says, out of this car with people hugging and crying steps a lady with a red dress. She looked like Scarlett O'Hara, and going with the wind. And she's looking around like, who are these funny-looking people?
Yeah.
And I didn't. I just asked Dale today, but I understood. Joe's Howard Cramer's security was so high, his wife did not know he could talk German. So she's thinking, who are these funny-looking people? What language is that?
Yep.
And who's Joe?
Right.
I married Howard Cramer.
Right. Unbelievable.
And then Miriam and Fanny, Joe's daughter Fanny, are in the milk house. I make up stuff, so I don't know. I think they were hiding, because soldiers kill people.
Yeah.
They've been told all their life, soldiers, and here's a guy that's going to kill somebody.
Yep.
And here this guy comes down to the milk house. And they're shaking in their boots, if they had any. And he looks at Fanny, his daughter. He'd never met, had he? Had never met her?
No.
And he says, you must be Fanny. Yes. she confessed.
Yep.
And then he looks at Miriam, which was her half-sister. You must be Fanny. And, there's so much. And anyway, they found out that this is their uncle. And I can't remember now because Miriam was bragging to Fanny
Yeah.
that this is my uncle, but not yours
But
because
not
you were from the
yours.
first.
Yes.
And here it was his daughter.
Yeah. Yeah, she didn't know. Neither of them knew that he was Fanny's father. And Miriam was, she and Fanny were very close.
Only Mary knew it, and Enos.
Miriam, I don't think Miriam.
No, Miriam didn't know it, but I mean the mother. Your aunt knew it. Enos Shetler knew it.
Yeah.
Fanny didn't know it.
Yeah.
Your mom didn't know it. From what I understand, the way your mom found out was that after that visit, Mary wrote to her brother, Howard Cramer, and said, if you think you're going to get Fanny back, we've raised her, blah, blah, blah. And your mom said, what's this all about? Does that sound what the right story?
Yeah.
See, Dale here is got Amish blood. I got none, but I know the story from being around his relatives.
So that's the next question I was going to ask. Your dad shared all this with your mom, but left out the whole thing of Fanny.
I don't think he told her about Fanny at the time. I'm not absolutely positive.
You know, I'm going to call Miriam today sometime and ask, because I understood that she found out by a letter from Mary.
Yeah. And that's probably, I think I have seen that letter. He had an ammo box that I found after he passed that had a whole bunch of letters between him and Mary. And I believe I saw that letter. I know there were several between him and Mary.
So sorry to cut you off. What was life like for you and your brother as you got older? I mean, obviously, there at Niagara Falls, you wouldn't have had any idea what's going on.
No.
But as you grow up, did you start picking up that there were things in your dad's past that didn't make a whole lot of sense? Or had your mom and dad, had they worked things out? Was there still, tension there? What was it like for you guys as little boys?
I don't know that we were sensitive to any of that, but...
You want to hear what I heard from up here about that?
Sure.
After that letter from Mary, your dad slept on the couch for a while.
No, that wouldn't surprise me, but I wouldn't know about it.
I think Miriam told me that it was there was tension for a while till it.
Well, yeah.
That'd be a pretty obvious.
Yeah, when you find out your mate has another child and never told you. And,
And I wasn't told about it until I was 18 years old. I didn't know that I had a half-sister. She was my cousin. Mm-hmm. She was one of 17 Shetler children.
Yeah.
She was my cousin. And then she and Miriam came to visit us in Maryland in the mid-'60s. And they were about grown then. Mm-hmm. And I still didn't know. I mean, they were cousins.
Well, that's another story because Eli was building a barn in Delaware. Where were you, in Maryland or Delaware?
Maryland.
Wherever it was, brother Eli was building a barn, and what we call stay-away job. And I worked for Eli, but this is before I worked for him. Mm-hmm. So Miriam went along to be the cook with the carpenter gang, and Fanny says, "Tell Howard Cramer that I want to meet my dad." Because they never had a father-daughter relationship. So Miriam goes, and they're staying at Joe's house. You remember they stayed at your house?
Yes, they did.
And
they were there about a week.
So anyway, Miriam kept waiting for a chance, and I don't know if they stayed a week at a time.
Yeah.
She never said anything. So she comes home, and Fanny says, "What do you say? What do you say?" "I never asked him." Yeah. And so they went back again, and this time, doing dishes, Miriam said, "Hey, Howard, I'd like to talk to you." And he knew right away. He said, "Come down after everybody's in bed."
Well, that couldn't be.
No.
My father never washed a dish in his life.
Well, anyway. See how I get my stories mixed up? Your dad and I are on one. We're on one accord
Amish.
there.
He didn't wash dishes.
Yeah.
I did once.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, you weren't Amish.
That's all it took. Anyway, whatever it was, Joe told Howard told Miriam, come down after everybody's in bed, and she said they talked till 5 in the morning.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, I never knew what was behind that visit. It seemed strange to me. These girls showed up out of nowhere, and they were, Shetler cousins. I knew who they were, but we didn't know them. You know, it's strange situation. There's a lot strange about that situation. What I remember about those years is the darkness between me and my dad. I think what I finally arrived at when I was writing this book, and it was an epiphany, but he was carrying this anger over his father's rejection and disappointment and berating of him and that sort of thing. And it was that anger that caused him to do the same thing to me. And he didn't even realize it. He wasn't aware of it. There's a conversation that took place later much later, when we were beginning to be friends. It was when Jake died, my Uncle Jake. And I think that's a big part of this book, that was one point where we did a lot to reconcile the relationship between me and my father. But my mother, we were in Georgia, and Jake died up here. And he loved Jake, his older brother. And I was fond of him from what I knew of him, and got along with his kids. But my mother was this Southern woman, and Jake died in the wintertime. I remember it was
I
winter.
can't remember. I was good friends. I don't remember.
There was a huge snowstorm coming across the middle of the country, Tennessee and Kentucky. And Dad wanted to come up here for Jake's funeral, but they knew the weather was going to come right across, and they were going to be going right through it. And they were kind of arguing back and forth about whether or not to go to this funeral. And I knew that my dad desperately wanted to go, and I knew that my mother was the sort who would eventually give in and say, okay, we can go to the funeral. But as soon as they hit an icy patch on the road in Tennessee or someplace, she'd make him turn around and come back home. And I didn't have those kind of misgivings. I wasn't afraid of it. And so finally, when they were at an impasse, I spoke up and said, why don't I go with you? And when you can leave Mom at home, she'll be fine, and you and I can make it to the funeral. And I think that was part of the bridge building that was going on between me and him. That trip meant a whole lot. And I remember when we were coming back from that trip, he started talking about HARF and what it was like. And he said, he had described several things that had happened, and he said, you just can't imagine what it was like living in the house with that man. It was just, and he got stuck for words. And I said, I was driving, kept my eyes forward, and I said, he was just a dark presence in the house, something to be avoided if possible. And he thought about it for a second, and he said, yeah, have I told you this before? And I said, and these are my exact words. I said, no, I wasn't talking about your dad. I was talking about mine. And he got quiet for about 30 minutes.
Really?
And thought through all of that. Neither one of us said anything for a long time. But that, too, was, you have to rip some scabs off at some point, But it was the same kind of relationship between us.
And he had no idea that he was the same.
Yeah. And I'm sure his father didn't either, and probably his father didn't either.
Wow.
It rolls down the generations.
Yeah.
I think maybe that's the the sins of the fathers that the Bible talked about.
Yeah.
You know,
So, what's your older brother's name?
Alan.
Alan. Is he a year or two older than you? Is that right?
He's somewhere between 2 and 4. I never can quite get it straight.
How did your dad's parenting style impact him? Was it the same as you, probably, Dale?
No, because our personalities were vastly different. My brother was very quiet, very obedient, a lot more sedentary than I was. I was the Tasmanian devil.
Just going all the time.
Wide open, endlessly curious, and full of mischief and no rules. I was exactly the sort of thing that would cause a problem for my dad with his Amish discipline and military discipline, and children are to be seen and not heard. I didn't fit that mold. And then I had a younger sister who was the apple of his eye. So I was. It fell to me to be the black sheep of the family, and I took it on with relish. It was part of my nature.
Hey, good job, man.
And you kind of played the role, yeah.
Yeah.
So you go to Jake's funeral with your dad, just the two of you. Yeah, and you've got hours. How was the year or two after that? Did you talk a lot more?
We talked on the drive, and there were a lot of things. He was a quiet man. I mean, he said maybe 4 or 5 words a year, and a lot of things weren't said, but there were exchanges. That I think he really appreciated that I volunteered to go with him, because he would never have made it to the funeral if I hadn't done that. Mm-hmm. He just wouldn't have been there, and he was appreciative of that.
Did he tell you stories about Germany? Did he tell you the stories of Fanny and?
He had already told me that Fanny was my sister before that. I think he told me when I turned 18, and I was this was a year or two after that we went to Jake's funeral. And I knew the story, but I remember having no reaction to it at the time.
Really?
No, because he and I were not, when he told me this, he and I were not friends, and I didn't know what to do with that information. I had no idea what to do with it. I wasn't for it or against it, or it just didn't mean much, at that point. Later on, it did. Later on, Fanny eventually became accepted in our family, and we would spend Thanksgiving at her house, or she'd come up and spend Thanksgiving at our house, and we saw each other pretty regularly and got to know the family and everything.
Did she have her own family then, too?
Fanny?
Yeah.
Yes, she married George Wingard. And they had, I think, 6 kids.
Yeah.
And they left the Amish, and they had a farm down in South Georgia. It's like 3-4 hour drive away from where we live. And I'm still in touch with. In fact, had dinner with my nephew and his wife not long ago. They came through Atlanta and they stopped off to see us. Went out.
What when you think back over that whole thing, Dale, what do you see as far as the the biggest, I'm not even sure what the word is, but what are the biggest convergences or things that you look at and go, only the Lord could do that?
this whole story, from beginning to end, I felt like growing up that my father was my worst enemy. And we changed some of that, especially when I went with him to Jake's funeral, and we had started to change things. But then when I was 32, I was in a serious accident at work. I was working in a mine and electrician, and I blew up the motor control center by accident. Freak accident, but it was like a fireball about 3 feet deep, and I was at the epicenter of it. So I spent 6 weeks in the burn unit, almost died. Had major burns over half my body, and serious situation, and it changed everything for me. I think that was when I really first became a Christian, right after that, and because of it.
You shouldn't have been here.
No,
You shouldn't have been here.
no.
Wow.
But it was, and that was another big step for me and my father, because he lived on the other side of town, and he drove past that hospital every day. And he would stop in every afternoon on his way home from work. He would stop in the hospital and spend an hour in the burn unit with me. And I'll never forget, there was one day he was in there, and we talked some. But there was for me, it was a striking incident. I don't know if he was thinking about it that way at the time, but I was trussed up in this bed. My hands were useless, and they were tied up to IV poles, and I was laid back in this bed and doing a lot of morphine. And my father was there, and we talked some. And before he left one day, he noticed I had been, they would let you walk up and down the hall and drag your IV poles with you. And the floors were a little dirty, and Dad was there, and he noticed that he's sitting in a chair against the wall opposite me, and he noticed my feet were dirty. And he didn't say anything. He got up and went over to the sink and got a washcloth, wet it, and came over there and washed my feet. And I found it incredibly moving for some reason, that he washed my feet, and they were just dirty. And he was doing it for practical reasons, but it had this huge significance for me. I think that was a turning point, like you're talking about. There are things like that. There's a whole lot more to it than that, but every bit of it had God's fingerprints on it. I think the whole hospital experience, I was telling John the other night that at that point in time, I was 32, and I was asking myself, I've been in church 3 times a week my entire life, and then I heard these questions asked that were so childish that I thought, what are we, we're 32 years old, and we don't really know anything but rules and regulations. And I started thinking, what is a Christian? And part of that went, what's a Christian? And then within 2 weeks, I find myself in the burn unit near death.
Really? It was 2 weeks after you started thinking.
Within 2 weeks of that, yeah. And I'm in the burn unit, and I notice that, first of all, the nurses had to feed patients who, my hands were tied up. They were bandaged the size of footballs, and they were tied up to IV poles, so I couldn't feed myself. The nurses were supposed to feed me, but I noticed after a while that the nurses never had to feed me. There was always somebody there. There was always somebody visiting, family member, church. Somebody was there every mealtime for some reason, and the nurses never had to feed me. But it registered, and there were other things like that happened, things that people did for me. And I think the most striking thing, another thing I didn't know at the time, was that while I was in the ICU, in the burn unit, my wife's mother in Birmingham, which is 2 hours away, was diagnosed with advanced breast cancer. And she was in the hospital, and my wife was having to run back and forth, and she didn't tell me.
Oh, my.
She didn't think I needed that. But she was there for visiting hours most every day. And toward the end of my stay there, there was an assault on a woman in the parking deck right after visiting hours ended. And the next morning, one of the security guards was arrested for the assault in the hospital parking deck. The security guard was arrested for this assault. And here I am, trussed up, and my wife is, at 9 o'clock at night, is going through this parking deck every night, and I'm tied up, like
You're completely
helpless. Nothing I can do. And I think this was 2 weeks before I got out of the hospital. But you have to remember, I had asked, what is a Christian?
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I noticed the day after that incident took place, there was a couple from the church that we went to. They showed up at the door of my room, and they didn't come in. They had to get gowned up and everything, but they didn't come in. They stood at the door and they waved around the door, and I thought, well, I probably wouldn't come in either. I have an idea what I look like. Didn't have much of a face at the time, and head was still swollen. And, I can understand why they wouldn't, that and the smell, they wouldn't come in the room. And then they left, and my wife left, and I didn't think anything about it. Visiting hours were over. Next day, exact same thing, different couple. Didn't come in the room. There, right at the end of visiting hours, my wife left with them. And after about 3 days, I asked her, what's going on? She said, well, a different couple every day drives me down here from 30 miles away where we live. Different couple comes every day, drives me down here, and escorts me into the hospital, back to the car, takes me home.
And you had no idea at the time?
No.
You had no idea that the assault had happened or anything?
No. Well, I knew about the assault. I knew I couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah.
I mean, the word was all over the hospital about the assault.
Okay.
But there was nothing I could do.
The church had set that up for your wife?
Well, the people in that Sunday school class had done that.
Wow. How did that impact your faith?
Completely. I think at that time I was one of those people who'd been to church all his life and still didn't know what a Christian was, and now knew what a Christian was. And it changed everything. It made me start really looking, and asking questions and talking to God about it. Because I had thought that I was a Christian, but never paid much attention to it, And I think there are millions of people in that position. But once you start to have a conversation with God, and especially one like that starts with being slapped into the burn unit with,
My goodness.
burned over half your body. I've got skin grafts on both hands. You can't really tell it unless I show it to you, but I've got skin grafts and scars all over. And this is not the nose that I used to have. It burned away, and then came back different. Everything came back different after that.
How long were you in the hospital there, Dale?
About 6 weeks. I've never actually checked, but I suspect it was 40 days and 40 nights.
Right around there.
Right around there, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because everything was different after that. And I eventually came to understand a great many things that I had not understood before, that faith and trust in God, it's we have to beware of the leaven of the Pharisee. It's not about rules and regulations. It's very simple. It's about love. There's a place in this book that I marked that I was telling John, I don't really think I wrote this. I typed it. But I don't really think, I think I know where this came from, but it ends up being like the backbone of the book. It's when Will, which would be my father's character in this book, is coming back to the States. He's escorting a shipload of coffins right after the war, 2,400 American soldiers. He's bringing them back home to their families. And he's been awarded this prize of being able to come home on this ship. And once he has assigned all these people to their families, he can take 2 weeks off, stateside. And he runs into this priest on the ship, which is somebody, I don't know, he just showed up and wrote himself into the story.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out he had been in a concentration camp. And he says when he's trying to explain to Will about this anger that's inside him and what he can do about it, and what will change it. And he says, well, it starts with the priest's side turned his palms up and examined them as if he hoped to find some answer written there. When he looked up, a great compassionate sorrow deepened the lines in his face. My eyes have seen too much of man, he said quietly. I'm not as wise as I once was, or perhaps wiser. And answers do not come easily anymore. Given all that you've endured, no penance I could assign would be very meaningful to you, but somehow you must come to understand that God is love, that love is the proof of God, and that forgiveness is the proof of love. This is the seed I can plant. Only God can make it thrive. That's the heart of this book, and I'm not sure I wrote it. I typed it. But that was a powerful thing that I was given, an understanding that I was given.
How did, after your time in the hospital, how long did your dad live after that?
Oh, let's see. He died, that was in 85, and he died in 2012.
So he was,
That would have been like, what,
Okay.
27 years?
yeah.
Long
Did your friendship continue to grow?
Yeah. Yeah. We became good friends. The whole thing completely changed. I think it changed both of us. We enjoyed the same things: woodwork, fishing, baseball. I mean, we had all those things in common, and we started doing those things together. I remember when it was a year or two before he died, I was building a porch swing out in his shop, and I was routing the edges of the slats, and he came out and was standing there. He had gotten quite old. I think it was only a year or two before he died. And he was standing there with his cane. Cold weather, he's wearing a hat and coat. He was just watched me for a long time. And I remember I stopped what I was doing at some point, and he smiled and he said, "That's exactly the way I would have done that." And I thought that was a milestone.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
this sort of thing that matters, But it was, we'd gone pretty much full circle.
Yeah. How old was he when he passed?
He was 86. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he lived a good full life. He had heart trouble there at the end, and they did something to one of his valves, and it didn't work quite right. And within a couple of years, he was gone.
Yeah. My dad died in 2011 at 55.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. I remember going through the funeral, all that stuff. And that's what everybody was saying was, "Oh, he's so young, he's so young." And I'm the oldest of our, three. And I was focused on taking care of Mom, and I didn't I don't think I let myself grieve anything for a year. And went through that whole process. And around that year and a half mark, a friend of mine, I'd ask him, I said, "Hey, what are you guys doing this weekend?" or something. And he said, "We're going to Boston to be with my dad for his 90th birthday or his 91st birthday." And that's when it hit me that's an entirely second lifetime that I missed out on. And that's when it really, yeah. So
And that's the other thing about all of this is the writing. I mean, I was a lifelong construction worker. It's all I'd ever done. I started working on bridges when I was 15. And by the time I was 19, I was in the electrical trade, and stayed there for, 25 years. And in the mid-'90s was when all this other stuff, the changes I went through after getting burnt and starting to follow the directions I was given, led me off in this strange direction where I ended up staying home, being a stay-at-home dad and taking care of my kids. And my wife was working. I had been injured in some way, but it was originally going to be I was going to stay home for a summer, but it seemed like the right thing to do. And I ended up staying home. And because of that, I started writing for whatever reason. It was because of a conversation I had while I was doing a night job building an office in a friend's house. We got in an argument, and it turned into an article, and I suddenly turned into, I was John Steinbeck. But all of these things, this whole chain of events was because we were following a different set of directions than we always had. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about family and doing the right thing. And that's how I ended up staying home. And that's how I ended up starting to write and thinking that I could do that. And that led to, actually, I spent 3 years learning to write a novel. And then just because I didn't want to waste that 3 years, I sent it to an agent, and lo and behold, she accepted it and sold it. And I got a 2-book deal, so I had to write another book. And all of this happened almost by itself. And the third book was this one. And I think now, looking back on it, I think this was the whole reason all of it happened.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel that book was an end in itself or part of the healing process? Did your dad have a chance to read it?
Yes, in fact, I told him about it before I even started on it, and he had some misgivings, but he said, well, I told him, I said, I'm not going to send anything to the publishing house until you've read it. And if there's anything you object to, we'll talk about it and settle it one way or another. But I said, I'm not sending something off that you haven't looked at. And so he said, okay. And the only thing he ever complained about was he said in the book it describes him wrestling a Russian soldier away from an officer and tossing him over a bridge railing, and the guy eventually drowns because of it. And that was the only thing in the book that he objected to. It didn't happen. It was the only thing in the book that he objected to. He said, I never killed any Russian. He objected to that till the day he died. He really didn't want me to put that in there, but
wow.
Other than that, he didn't have any complaint.
So
but like everybody in that Amish church, and your dad included, they want you to write the real story, because the real story is more unbelievable than this fiction.
Well, let's go back. Let's go all the way back to the ban. He took off that Sunday. Was that ever resolved with the Amish church?
Yes, after and because of this book.
Because of the book?
Yes.
You're kidding.
No, it wasn't my doing.
Sorry, but wow.
My aunt, the one who raised Fanny, my half-sister, had 17 children between her and Enos. They had 17. So they grew to be quite a large family by the time this book came out. We're talking well over 100 people, I guess, in the family. And so the book comes out, and it's fiction, and she had a really hard time with that to begin with, because Amish don't generally read fiction, and they don't do well with abstract. And
plus, those of us who knew the real people got all mixed up. Which one's which?
Yeah,
okay.
And I can see that now. When I read the book now, it confuses me because the names are changed and everything. But
yeah,
but I think somehow it had to be that way.
Well, I asked you about it when it first came out, and you said there was too many people still living
Yes.
that would be hurt.
Yes.
And most of them are now gone.
Yes.
So I give you permission to write the real story.
And Eli was the real impetus behind that. The problem is I don't know the real story that Eli was talking about. I know it was bad, but I don't know how bad. But anyway, after the book came out, all these generations after my Aunt Mary, of course, I think they bought one book and they all read it the Amish way. One book, 100 people, you're good.
Yeah,
frugal.
Yeah.
And I even heard there was a piece of paper like this passed around. It was inside a copy of the book, like this, and it had Sylvia is Bill Mary.
Yep. Like this index and this.
It was an index of who all the characters were. The names were, here's the fictional name, here's the real name.
Yep.
And it made the rounds, and everybody in the entire Amish community, had this directory of.
Oh my goodness. What year was it published, Dale?
05.
05. Okay.
Yeah. And anyway, there was a whole lot of talk in that huge family, and the younger ones had always known my father as a nice man. Even we didn't stay for meals at their house because Mary still observed the band.
Yep.
And somebody asked her then why she still observed the ban against my father, and she said because he never went back and asked for forgiveness. Mm-hmm. He never.
Mary's his sister.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
He never went back to the church and asked for forgiveness. And eventually, with all these conversations, this had never. I mean, they don't talk about things. This is something that was swept under the rug and wasn't discussed. This was her best friend who had Fanny.
Yeah.
And so she knew in great detail everything that went on. But she was the only source. And so all of these children started asking questions when they read this book, and they finally figured out what this real story was. And because it was fiction, they needed all these explanations of why this and why that, and did this really happen? Did that really happen? And it opened up all these old wounds, and some of them healed, And finally, it was a couple of my cousins who, and you may have heard something about this, who it was, I don't know, but a couple of my cousins wrote my dad. He came down and talked to me about it and said that they had written him and said that they thought that he should write to the bishop and ask for forgiveness and see what happens. And I asked him then, I said, why have you never done this before? And he said, well, because before Enos was alive, Enos had passed away, and he said, as long as Enos was alive, there's no way I was going to be absolved of anything. It wasn't going to happen. And so after Enos was gone, and this all took place after Enos was gone, and they wrote to him and said, you should send a letter to the bishop. So I sat down and we helped him. He wrote a letter. And it took about 6 weeks to get an answer. It was a young bishop.
Yeah, the young bishop's never heard of him.
Yeah.
I heard that story from this side because the young bishop, in fact, the bishop, when he was a baby, his caretaker was Fanny.
Oh my goodness.
His mod,
Yeah, sure.
the Amish get a mod or somebody to help take care of the baby.
Right.
Fanny took care of this little kid who grew up to be the bishop. I don't
my
think
goodness.
he did not realize Fanny was the daughter of this person who's now writing a letter to see if he can get the ban taken off.
There's another thing about that bishop. I found out later that, in one of the last chapters in this book, there's a young bishop. He's one of the ones that speaks at Jake's funeral. And he's reluctant to do it, but he preaches in English. And after the funeral, I asked my dad, I said, you ever heard an Amish preacher speak in English before? And he said, not that I can recall. I said, that guy went out of his way because he struggled with it. He was having to translate on the fly to say what he wanted to say. That was a lot of trouble for him. And I asked him, I said, best you can figure, how many people in that building didn't speak Dutch. And he thought about it, and thought about it, and thought about it. He finally said, pretty sure it was one. Yeah.
It was you.
Yeah. The same bishop.
You mean this really happened, or is this in the story?
It's in the story, and it really
happened.
Yeah.
They preached in English at
He
Jake's
preached
funeral.
in English at Jake's funeral.
Yeah, I wasn't there. I don't remember.
Now, I don't know if he was the bishop at that time, but I know that he spoke it. I know that that was the guy who spoke at Jake's funeral.
But you know, at your Uncle Eli's funeral, I was in Ireland, and I got word that Eli died, my old boss, and I came home early for that because they had asked me to do something, and I said I won't be there. Well, I changed my schedule, came home, and went to the family there before the funeral, and then I sat way in the back, and here the guy comes over and said, "We'd like you to read Psalm 91 as they go past the casket."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I didn't, anyway, in German. So I read Psalm 91 as they went past the casket. But the funny thing is, the bishop preached in English.
Really?
I'd never been to an Amish place where they, anyway, so in the budget it said, the Amish bishop preached in English, the English guy read the scripture in German.
Right. Right.
And
Wow.
thankfully, they don't allow cell phones to take how my accent was.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did you guys connect on this whole thing? Because Dale, I'm assuming you know this, but John and I go way back. He was friends with my dad for many, many years. He sang on our cabin's porch multiple times for big get-togethers.
Yeah, they had singings at their place several times a year.
Yeah. Oh, it was a lot. And John mentioned you one time and said, "Marlon, have you ever heard of Howard Cramer? And you ever hear the story?" And totally blew my mind, right? I grew up Amish for, the first, 5 years. I've got hundreds of, family. I can identify with a lot of what you're talking about. And he starts telling me this story, and I immediately said, "Oh, okay. If we can get Dale up here from Georgia, we have to get on it." How did you guys figure out that you knew parts of each other's family story?
Well, John, first of all, I think he lies about his age. I think he's really about 312 years old.
I was going to say 225,
Yeah.
but yeah.
And I'm
More like
6'2".
Yeah.
And you're 6'2".
Yeah, and he's 6'2", and but he knows everybody in the Western Hemisphere and about 60% of the ones in the Eastern Hemisphere.
I owe them all money. That's why they.
He's on a first name basis with most of them.
He knows a lot of people.
But he was the first time I met John was at the family reunion. One of the things that happened over the years, I don't remember what year that was.
Was it at Henry's place?
Yeah.
There's 3 or 4 Amish families that when they have a family reunion, they invite me.
Yeah.
And you're not even family.
No.
You're just
You've been God's Hove. I'm totally non-Amish, but I'm friendly.
Yep.
But Henry's family has always treated us.
Well, Henry and I lived together. I mean, he was the hired hand, and when my parents moved to Worcester, I boarded with this guy. So we lived we didn't live in the same house. He was the hired hand, and I was living in the old single farmer's house.
Okay.
So we worked a lot together, and
You're practically an uncle to me.
let me tell you about that. I'm in Sarasota, Florida, and the waitress says my name, and here she's one of Eli H's grandchildren, and I knew that, I knew everybody, but I didn't know that generation, and so the next day she's a waitress, and I told the guy with me, I was just joking, I said, how was it? I said something crazy that might make my wife roll her eyes, but I said, what did I say? I said something like, back when I was Amish, I worked with her dad, something like that. Whatever it was, they all laughed. Well, that very same day, the waitress came to me and said, "You mean you were never Amish?" She thought I was her uncle.
No kidding. Wow.
I said, "No." So I have several identities that I could.
When you say that John is practically your uncle, what do you mean by that?
Because he's like part of the family in a lot of ways, and he knows more about my family than I do.
Well, one of my classmates was Jake Gingrich, which is my wife's cousin. His sister married Eli H. So when I worked for Eli, I was actually working for my future wife's relative.
Yeah.
And even though my wife didn't even know him, because when my wife's family left the Amish, I'd cut everything off. So at our wedding, a lot of Amish came, and I had to introduce my wife to her cousins.
To her own cousins. Yeah.
They came because they knew me.
Wow.
Now, even though that generation doesn't do anything with the boycott, they didn't know each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Eli's wife called my house one time, got a hold of my wife, and she said, "This is Ayla Katie." And my wife, "Who?" Ayla Katie.
Yeah.
My wife turned around to me and said, "Who is Ayla Katie?" I said, "Uncle Eli's wife, Katie."
Yeah. Eli's Katie.
Yep.
Yeah. But back to where I met John, there was a reunion at Henry's house up off of Carr Road, north of
Moreland Road.
Moreland Road, north of Fredericksburg. Anyway, they had a family reunion, and and Henry's always been very kind to us, and he specifically wanted us to come to this family reunion. And
Us meaning you or your dad also?
the family,
The whole family.
Dad and me, and I don't remember if my mother was there. It may have been just me and my father. But he and I made several trips up here at different times for different things. But anyway, we went to this reunion at Henry's house, and I'll never forget. It got this long drive, and right down at the end of the drive, there's a sign at the end of his driveway that says Miller/Cramer reunion.
No kidding.
He actually put,
No kidding.
and there were only two Cramers there that I know of, but he put Dad's
Wow.
name on that sign, and that was the one where Dad stood up.
Everybody introduced themselves, yeah.
Yeah, everybody. They start in order of the oldest sons, and it came down to my dad, and I think he was stunned when they actually said his name, and he was supposed to stand up and talk. And when he stood up, he told who he was and who his family were, did those things, and then he talked about he had a daughter. She was there, as a matter of fact, and he said that he told the whole thing. You might remember it better than I do.
I was there, and all I remember was it was the first time he publicly acknowledged that
Yes.
Mary took care of his daughter.
And did a better job than he ever could have, was what he said.
It was a breakthrough.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it publicly acknowledged the whole thing and apologized and said that he knew that his daughter was well taken care of. He was sorry for what trouble he had caused and whatever. But it was a breakthrough moment when he did that. And I was sitting there listening to it, and so was John.
Especially for Mary.
Yes, I think
Yeah.
it meant the world to Mary.
So then what happened with the band?
That came after the book came out, and two of the cousins wrote my dad.
Wait, so the reunion happened before the book came out?
Pretty sure it did. I'm not positive. I don't know when.
Old people can't remember order of things. I was there, but
That's interesting.
I can't remember.
Okay.
Jake was there. Jake was alive, and
Yeah.
he'd been diagnosed with cancer. That should date it. I don't know when Jake passed away, though.
I can't remember either. I don't think I was at the funeral. I was at most of those funerals, but I must have been away.
Yeah.
But I do remember that when they lifted the ban, the shunning, I think the first meal was at that restaurant here in Berlin, wasn't it? Or was it at home at Thanksgiving? I think the first time Mary ate with her brother Joe, I was at the restaurant when I just saw. I wasn't part of the deal. I just happened to see your dad, Mary, some of the Chetler family, and Jake Chupp was there. Is it an uncle?
The Dan Chupp.
Dan Chupp. And later on, I found out that's the first time they'd eaten together for 60-some years.
Well,
So it's either that or the Thanksgiving. It was the same trip.
the first time that Dad ate with her, as soon as they lifted the ban, she wrote. And
Come on
it
up.
was only a couple of weeks later that Thanksgiving happened. And the first time that he ate at his sister's table was Thanksgiving Day.
Okay, so it was the same trip then, probably, that they ate at the restaurant.
Same trip.
Same
yeah,
trip.
Same trip. But we went, I drove him up there, and the two of us went to Thanksgiving at her house. And I took my son, Dusty was with me. So there were 3 generations of us went to Mary's house because she had, as soon as they lifted the ban, she fired off a letter and said, "Come for Thanksgiving."
Wow.
And that
Oh,
was
I love
what
it.
that's what that piece was about. That described that whole thing. But that was the first time that he had eaten at her. And they didn't. They threw away the seating order.
Yep.
They seated the two of them next to each other, and they stayed there all day long. And I'll never forget the older daughters were lined up. I was sitting on this side of the table, and Mary and my father were on that side, and their daughters were lined up on both sides of them, and they were all sitting there like this, listening to
You
it.
seen pictures of the Last Supper?
Yeah, it looked
This
like,
is the First Supper.
yeah, it looked like that. But
Wow.
I asked them at some point, "What? Everybody, you're all leaning in and smiling. What's going on?" And they said, "It's the first time we ever heard him speak Dutch."
No kidding. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, Dale, with all of this, how have you parented your kids differently? Has it impacted the way you and Annie have parented? Or Ann?
No, that's my mother's name.
I'm sorry.
My wife's name is Pam.
I'm sorry.
Unfortunately, I think I wasn't as bad as my father, and he wasn't as bad as his father, but that strain still, I lost patience. I was trying to meet deadlines, and I lost patience with my sons the same way he did with me, and had some of the same issues. I have to admit.
Yeah.
And it's had its effects. But I'm aware of it now, and I don't see it in my sons. I don't see them parenting that way. So maybe it's finally trickling out, But that sort of thing, I don't know. Somehow it gets in the blood.
Has deep roots, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Wow.
And I hate admitting it because now I see it, but it was there.
Yeah.
And I hope it doesn't go any further.
Do you believe in coincidences? I mean, how do you look at that?
At everything that's happened, I don't see much of it as coincidence. I just, how do you go accidentally from being a lifelong construction worker with no college education to being an award-winning author writing about your father's story and something that changes lives?
Yeah. Brings people together in ways you could have never even comprehended.
And I know from my side, I know it's because I changed direction at some point and started following a different set of rules. You know, doing, instead of what's most profitable, let's concentrate on what's right. What's the right thing to do regardless of whether it pays or doesn't pay or whatever. That's not what's important in life. And it was after that sea change that all these things happen. And I think that's kind of how it goes, and I wouldn't describe it as coincidence.
Wow. John, did we miss anything?
Oh, yeah. But,
I know we did.
I got to be home by tomorrow. There's so much. And, I was out at Lydia's uncle's place in Arizona, the other brother, the one that didn't join the Army. And we obviously were talking about your book because I think I called your dad. I said, I still have his phone number because your dad and this uncle would have also been in the same church. In fact, Uncle John Byler remembers being in the Amish church waiting for the confession when Joe Miller showed up, and he never showed up. That's the Sunday.
Really?
The story I heard was after Grandpa Harv, raked him over the coals one more time, he looked at Brother Bill and said, I can't face those people now. So when instead of going to church, they drove the buggy to Holmesville, threw their hat down the outdoor toilet, went down to the railroad where you were talking about, and jumped a train, and went out of state. And I understand that they're standing around in this town, and I didn't know where it was, Kentucky or Tennessee or someplace.
Elizabethtown.
And
Dad told me that.
this farmer came by and said, you guys looking for work? I said, yeah. And took them home, and they were very good with mules. They still farm with mules in Kentucky at that time.
Right.
And Joe and his brother Bill, they knew how to handle mules, and they did real well. And one morning, a week or two later, the wife says, I think I know what kind of people you are, because they're dressed Amish. And people now would know what they are, but back then. So she said, I'm not sure what she said, but she said, I think I know what kind of people you are. So they went out and did chores and never came back. And that's when somehow after that, Joe joined the Army and Bill came back home and joined the Amish church.
They migrated south, I think.
They went south from there. Anyway,
Followed crops or jobs or something.
they did not want to be found out because Harv would come and get them.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's how scared they were of their dad.
Wow.
It's an unusual story.
And Uncle John Byler's talked to your dad. Wow. Your dad couldn't figure out who he is.
My dad?
No, his phone call from Arizona.
Okay.
He's talking to Dale's dad. I'm John Byler. And you could hear. He said, remember, I used to date your sister. So he dated Mary.
Yeah.
I didn't know that till that phone call. But it was once they found out, it was yap.
Yeah, going to town.
They caught up with each other.
Wow, guys, thank you. I hope you know how much I appreciate the time and to just sit and just hear and just listen and think together. How can we pray for you and your family and
just pray for my sons. My wife and I have, of course, we're empty nesters, have been for years. We've got wonderful marriage. We've got wonderful neighbors. I've got wonderful friends, and we've really been blessed. I don't see how things could be any better.
How many grandkids do you have?
Only 3 at this point. We were late having children. We had some difficulties. Didn't even try for the first 10 years, and then we had difficulties, physical difficulties, for the next 5 years. So it was a long time. We were in our 30s before we started having children. But we've got 3 grandchildren now. Wonderful little children. I think the oldest one is like 6.
So they are, just little boogers. Well, we definitely will. Thank you again. Thanks for making the trip up. John, thanks for driving the 10 minutes. This has been great.
This episode is brought to you by Homestead Living magazine. Homestead Living is a monthly print magazine that interviews all the big names in the homesteading world, and they focus and educate in a wonderful way. You can learn more and subscribe at homesteadliving.com.
So hold my hand.
If you got anything out of this podcast, you will probably love Plain Values in print. You can go to plainvalues.com to learn more and check it out. Please like, subscribe, and leave us a review. Guys, love you all. Thanks so much.